Hi everyone, it's Kerchie. It's time for my second Polly Pocket repaint. This time I'm going to be repainting Dino Discovery. This is actually my favorite one from the Hidden Hideouts collection because I love dinosaurs. When I was a kid, I would read so many books about them and obsess over them. And of course, as an adult, I learned that they actually had feathers and were basically just giant chickens and ruined my whole childhood. Anyway, let's give Dino Discovery a makeover. My idea for this repaint is to do the exact opposite of what we see here. So right now there's a lot of bright colors, bright orange, bright pink. It looks like we're in some 80s movie that's somehow set in the Jurassic times. And what I want to do is make it look really primal, very primitive. I am going to start with some gesso as a base. I've said in the past that I don't know if you need gesso at all. I feel like it helps paint stick better, but sometimes I'll use it, sometimes I won't. I can't really tell the difference because I'm able to make any paint pop without using gesso. I'm completely repainting the ocean because I don't like how it currently looks. There's not a lot of detail on it right now, and I'm gonna add that later. I'm also painting the sticker part because I absolutely despise the pattern that they put here. It doesn't even look like water, it just looks like a sweater pattern. I'm also repainting the green area where there's plants and flowers. I'm using a very dark green because I want it to look like a jungle. Sometimes you have to paint in layers in order for the paint to actually show and cover the whole area. So right here, I'm adding the second coat. The water already looks so much better and I haven't even done anything to it. While all of that is drying, I'm gonna move on to the many leaves that I have to paint. I'm taking that same pine green again and I'm just painting every other leaf. I'm really not a fan of painting leaves because they all look the same but just different shades of green, and green is one of my least favorite colors. I'm sorry, green lovers. Now I'm painting the bottom half of the plants. It was actually really annoying to paint the lower level of this compact because the carousel just kept getting in the way. It was especially tedious because I had to do multiple layers. Going back to the leaves, I'm now using a regular green, which is the same color as it was before, so I probably shouldn't have done this, but it does give it a bit of a texture, so I went ahead and just kept going with it. Did I mention I hated painting leaves? Of course, there is this large tree trunk, which is going to be brown. This was so satisfying to paint because I wanted to cover up this purple so badly. I'm also covering the fossils and I'll be painting the details later. I'm using a fine brush to get into the nooks and crannies. A general rule of painting is you always paint the background first, and then the foreground, and then the details, and I did it completely backwards. I should have painted the tree trunk first and then the leaves, because here you can see I'm having to paint over the leaves. For the other half, I want this to be an entire cave area, so I'm laying down some beige paint. I'm also painting the inside of this cave here, and as you can imagine, it was very difficult trying to get my brush in there and paint the little nooks and crannies. Again, I'm using a fine brush to get the smaller areas. Now comes the fun part, which is painting the water. I had an idea in my head for how I wanted this to look, and my techniques aren't probably the best, but basically what I'm doing is laying down some stripes and then blending them later. I want this water to look very dangerous, very threatening, as everything basically is back in the dinosaur times. I'm using 3 different shades of blue so that the water has more depth and you can see deeper areas, more shallow areas. Now I'm using white to add some highlight and make it look like it has very threatening and dangerous waves. I also want to say that whenever I repaint a poly, I have a general idea of what I want, but I'm basically just making it up as I go along and just hope for the best. Now that everything's blended, I'm adding a little bit more highlights, so I'm just going around again and using white paint to really make those waves pop. To be honest, I have never painted water before. This was my first time, and I just kind of let my imagination run wild here. I also learned that you can in fact blend paint, and that's an ocean you don't want to swim in. And we're back to plants. So now I am painting all the grassy areas. This actually isn't a very symmetrical design. So on this side there are much longer grasses, and then there's this big bush over here. To add variety, I'm using this lime green and I'm just painting the outer edge of the bushes. Halfway through I realized that it looks like barf and I immediately hated it it. Not sure why I kept going with it. At this point, I realized I'm just gonna turn it into some kind of moss. There was a lot of moss back then, I imagine. There's a lot of moss now. So here I am mossing it up, and this was actually really fun to do because I get to just stab the compact with my brush. I'm adding a little yellow to give it some highlight. I'm really channeling my inner Bob Ross here. I'm also making it climb up the sides so that it looks more realistic. And I'm just blending, blending, blending. For the flowers, I want to do red because red to me is danger in nature. And I like to imagine that these are gigantic, animal-eating, poison flowers. I clearly know nothing about nature. Going back to the cave, I am just giving it some shading and detail so that it looks more cavey and rocky. It already has some textures to it, so all I'm doing is outlining it with some gray, and with more gray, just blending it all in. I love adding dots because it's just an easy way to add more details to your designs. I'm completely redoing the cave. I'm gonna paint a fire later, so I'm just gonna lay down some black paint over here. Now that the flowers are dry, we can add the dots. I think yellow and red go really well together. Back to the cave, I am taking some darker gray and just going over what I had already done just to make them pop a little more. I am also adding the second layer of black paint to make it look really, really dark. The fossils are so cute and I couldn't wait to paint these. I think painting the fossils alone adds so much more detail and so much more fun and charm to this compact. I'm just picking colors that make sense, but also colors that are cohesive with everything else. Again with the dotting method, this time I'm using dark brown to do the trees. Now I'm adding more details to the trees, and there are textures here to help guide me, so all I'm doing is outlining them with a darker brown. I'm using a super thin brush to do this, so that's how you get those really thin lines. And of course, I gotta do my dots because I just love them. They look really cute, and it's so easy. I'm using that same green from before to paint the vines, and I'm pretty much just gonna detail all of these with green paint. Since I have that green, I'm just gonna go over some of the paint that dried a little too thin. I painted outside the lines here a little bit, so I'm going back over that and cleaning that up. The thing about acrylic paint that I love so much is no matter how many times you mess up, you can always fix it. I'm taking that lime green again, and that's gonna be the third color for these plants. So I'm just going through all the ones I already did and adding a splash of this super bright green. It was really boring that the plants were just one shade of green, and I think this gives them a little more personality. I'm also adding that same lime green to the vines. I'm just going around trying to paint any leafy areas that I missed. I don't understand why this nest is this super neon pink. I understand that it's just a toy, but from an artist's perspective, why? I am skipping back and forth because I'm waiting for things to dry. So here I am finishing the plant antennas. Tentacles, planticles, and more leaves. Look at all of these leaves just calling me to paint them. I decided to paint the background of this coconut tree area. I want to do some kind of sunset gradient. I kind of regret it because it's very hard to paint these backgrounds. So here I am blending it with some yellow to give it a gradient. Back to the nest, I realized that I painted the bottom brown instead of green. Those are in fact leaves. So here I am correcting them, and we're back to the top again. I am adding some details on these plants, which were very thin and very hard to paint. I'm using light brown for the coconut trees because I don't want to use the same brown as the main tree. That's a little bit boring. These trees needed to be painted so badly. They just blended into the background because they were the background. By adding paint and all of these details, you can change the entire look of this compact. I also want to point out that that vine was always falling and ruining my paint job, and I'm trying to hook it to the edge of the opening. It worked for the most part. I do like that the eggs are yellow, but not the fact that they're neon yellow. So I'm taking some yellow orange and I'm just painting over it. I think these are supposed to be rocks. If not, they are now. Why does this paint look like chocolate? I really want chocolate now. For these eggs, the first color I thought of was red because I wanted to do more threatening colors. I keep using the word threatening on a very cute toy, but when I think dinosaurs, I just think lots of scary, dangerous things. Everything can hurt you, even the plants. Yes, I am painting the background yet again. I highly debated doing this one because I knew how annoying it would be to try to fit my brush in there. And here are the details on the coconut trees. I really do appreciate that they already have the textures there, so all I have to do is trace them. For the coconuts, just regular dark brown will do. this one looks like dark chocolate. I'm taking that dark green again to color the vine. This was so satisfying to do because again, it was all one color, so it's really fun to watch these come together. I decided I want to add some teeth to this terrifying T-Rex and more details on all of these dinosaurs. I wanted to give him blue stripes to make him look cuter. Then I decided to add blood to make him look ferocious. I'm just going around adding some details I missed, like these little eggs that need dots, and these big eggs that need bigger dots. I'm using a tool with a ball at the end of it, and that's how I get these perfect circles. These eggs need dots too. Just put dots on everything. Keep going. Keep dotting. Adding the final details to these cute little dinosaurs that I really hope the T-Rex won't eat. This pterodactyl over here needed some purple. I'm also coloring his horn purple to match the wings and his little tail. And more dots. I'm giving more variety to these rocks by taking some dark brown paint and just coloring every other rock. Now I'm going to paint a fire in this cave, and this is actually a tutorial that I found on YouTube. If you're interested, I have it linked in the description, but it's very, very easy and it looks intimidating at first, but it's actually super easy and fun. So what I'm doing here is using that dry brush method again to blend the paint. Now I'm adding the logs, which are just black lines underneath. I'm just doing a random crosshatch pattern. You don't want it to be too uniform because it doesn't look natural. With some yellow, I'm giving some highlights to the fire. I'm also adding it onto the pieces of wood to make it look like it's actually coming out of the wood. And I'm just blending upwards to give this fire some movement. With some red paint, I am just adding a bit of heat to the wood and the last bit of highlights to really make it glow. Finally, I'm adding sparks using the dotting method, and it just looks so beautiful and magical. Back to the big pterodactyl, I am coloring his beak yellow. He has a big old beak. I suddenly felt like adding fishies to the water, so here they are. I'm thinking this can be a group of fish, maybe threatening, maybe nice. You never know what you'll get in the prehistoric times. For this fish, I wanted to do some sort of giant squid slash Cthulhu looking creature. Just very, very menacing with long tentacles. You definitely don't want to come across one of these. And to give the nest more depth, I am taking some dark brown paint and painting over those little twigs. There were a lot of twigs. I can't forget about this little dino, so here I am giving him some patterns, more dots because it's so cute and it matches everything else I've done in the compact, his little toesies, and rosy cheeks to make him look extra cute. For the flower, I want it to match like everything else I've done in the compact, so I'm taking the same greens again and that same red. It looks like we actually picked one of the flowers, the dangerous, poisonous flowers. I'm just adding some gray to this headband just so it doesn't look so uniform and boring. And finally, the egg, which needs paint so badly. There are all these patterns and I just had the urge to color over them. It does look more cartoonish than the rest of the compact, but I still think it looks cohesive because I'm using the same colors. I'm emphasizing this crack right here by taking some dark purple paint and just going over the outline. I did learn something in art school, and to protect all of my hard work, I am covering it with a matte varnish. I get pretty crazy with varnish. You're supposed to put them on in multiple thin coats, but I like to glob it on there and really go crazy with it, which in hindsight was not a good idea because there are moving mechanisms to this compact and the little red egg on top already got stuck, but I don't even care because it just feels so good to go wild after all of that precision painting. Can't forget about the little pieces. They also need varnish to look extra awesome and be extra protected. Lastly, we are going to add a poly stick. I'm going to pick this green one because it just matches with the rest of the compact. I am so incredibly happy and proud with how this turned out. I learned so many things that I didn't know before about painting, different painting techniques. Lila looks so gorgeous with her flower and headband. This dinosaur is everything. I love him. So that was a lot more challenging than my first repaint, but I love how it turned out. Now I'm gonna have you guys choose my next repaint. So go ahead and choose one. You can either pick one from the Hidden Hideouts collection or the Tiny Pocket World collection. As always, thank you for watching my videos and supporting my channel, and I'll see you next time.